Hey, what's up, everybody? Well, today I want to talk about drop-ins for R22 and what I'm going to do to combat the rising cost of R22. Now, in this video, I am only talking about residential units. I am not talking about commercial package units. When you start talking about commercial, it's a total different world and a whole different subject. I'm talking about just a normal residential split system. Um, so, and I'm also only talking about what's going to work for me. If you don't agree with what I have to say because you do it differently, then that's fine. That's how you do it. That's not how I'm going to do it. Now, when I first started in the field, it was 23, almost 24 years ago. We were selling R22 for $10 a pound. And we were giving the first pound away on the maintenances. And I'm sure a lot of you guys were doing the same thing. But today is a whole different world. What we used to do then, we cannot do now because of SEER rating changes, because of this, because of that. And we had to do things totally different than what we used to. Even 4 years ago. So what we were doing 4 years ago, we can't do today, just simply because of the regulation changes. The SEER rating is different. You can't use R22. You all know the drill. It's a whole different ballgame now than it used to be. I've decided that, and after looking at all these units, I've decided that I'm just not going to use a drop-in. I'm not going to use 407C. I'm not going to use 422D. I'm not going to use RU22. I'm not going to use MO99. For a couple different reasons. One reason is because there's going to be too many guys out there using too many different products. One guy might use MO99. Another guy might use 407C. So I'm not going to be part of the problem with all the different refrigerants out there. I'm going to stick with 22. Another reason I'm not going to use it is because if the manufacturer would have wanted 407C or any of the other ones out there in their unit, they would have made a unit with it. And as a matter of fact, Carrier did make a 407C unit, and they made a 134A unit. It was just an experiment, and they realized that it didn't do what they needed it to do, so they scrapped the projects. Now, they made about 100 of the 134A units, and I know for sure that at least one of them was installed in a house here in Atlanta. And it belonged to the secretary of the tech support guys for my Carrier distributor. She lived in the house for 20 years, and when she moved out, that unit was still in the house and still working. The problem was they couldn't get, I think they advertised it as 12 SEER, and they couldn't get 12 SEER out of it. So that's when Carrier scrapped that project. And because of that, I'm just going to stick with R22. It's gotten expensive, and guys are selling it for anywhere from $100 a pound to $200 a pound, and when you start talking about a unit being 3 pounds low on refrigerant, this is $300 for the customer. So what I've decided to do, and this is the first year that I've been going to do it. Every other year, if they had a leak, let's say an evaporator coil, I would change the coil. But because of the way the regulations are now with 14 SEER, you can't use that same coil that I used last year or the year before that. Now you have to upsize the coil. In many cases, the coil is going to get bigger. You've got to use a piston coil if you're going to be putting a unit on the R22, because all the manufacturers, if they have a TXV in them, they're going to be a 410 TXV. So you have to find a coil that's a piston coil, but you have to make arrangements to upsize the coil to match the 14 series unit if you ever change them out. So let's use an example. If you have a 14-inch wide furnace, let's say you have a 3-ton system, and you have a 14-inch wide system furnace. Well, to get 3 tons on a piston coil, you have to put in a 21-inch wide coil. And this is Goodman, and this is their 14 series matchup. You have to put in a 21-inch wide coil. So you've got a 14-inch wide furnace, 21-inch wide coil, and a 14-inch wide plenum. Now, most guys, you know, that's a pretty big difference. This looks kind of like a woman. Will most guys do it right when they do that matchup? No. They're going to take the coil, they're going to, you know, set it on top of the furnace, they're going to blank it off on the bottom, and they're going to set the plenum on top, and they're going to pan that off at the top. They won't do it right. These matchups are crazy. You know, I had one just like that the other day. And what I did was I put a smaller coil on it, but I put a TXV on it to you know, make up for the coil size difference. But that's what I had to do to make it work. It's a crazy world now. I told a lady this morning when she called me, I told her, I said, you know, you're going to have sticker shock when you go to buy 22. So my suggestion is this time, because I've been out to her house 3 years in a row, this will be my 3rd year to put Freon in her unit. And I found a leak before, and I told her she needed to change it. But when I go out there tomorrow, I'm going to find a leak, and I'm going to explain to her that, hey, if we put any Freon in this thing, at this point, we're just wasting the refrigerant out of my drum. And I would just rather go ahead and fix it. Now, I know it's going to be costly for people. And I'm sorry. I don't have anything to do with that. That is not my fault. There's nothing I can do about it. I just am not going to... I feel like I'm doing a disservice to the customer by putting a drop-in in it, just simply because you're lowering your capacity of your unit. You know, and most of these systems are, the returns are undersized. You know, the unit may be a little undersized, and they're already having enough problems cooling the house anyway. So, you know, why take the capacity down if you don't have to? So that's one reason I'm not going to use a drop-in. And you know, you can call me wrong, you can say I'm wrong all you want to, but like I said before, this is what works for me, and this is how I have to do it to make it right for the customer and to make it right for me. And you know, the sad part is, with R22 going up the way it did, is there's going to be a lot of guys out there, side work guys, that aren't going to be able to buy the expensive drum of R22. So, and I can almost guarantee you, they've heard somewhere that they can just drop in, you know, MO99 right on top of R22. Now, there's guys out there that say it works. And there's guys out there that say, oh, I've done it all many times, I've never had a problem. Well, maybe you hadn't. But the two refrigerants do not mix. I mean, they just do not mix. And you will have a problem eventually. You just hadn't seen it yet. So what's going to happen is when they drop that refrigerant in on top of R22, when somebody does go out there and has to change the unit out, they're going to recover the refrigerant and they're going to put that contaminated refrigerant in a drum. Now they have to get rid of that refrigerant. You know, and it's something you have to think about. I mean, you have to think about the matchups. You have to make sure if you're changing the inside unit alone, you make it big enough to accommodate the 14 SEER unit. Now, this is what happens in the south. It's not what happens up north, because up north, you're still 13 SEER. But down south, we had to make that allowance. You know, if you're doing a 10 SEER unit, if you're putting a new coil on a 10 SEER unit, and let's say it's a heat pump, you better go up the next size on your coil, you know, on your air handler. Instead of doing a 2-ton, you know, you need to be putting a 36 in, just so you have the efficiency when you change the outdoor unit. And then, of course, you'll have to put a TXV on it. And that's where Goodman's going to make their sales. You know, they're going to make them because of the piston coils they have, where, you know, Carrier, Train, I don't know about Lennox. I know they used to have a piston coil on their 13 SEER, but I don't know what they're doing with their 14 SEER now. So, anyway, that's what I'm going to do. And it's what's going to work for me. And if it works for you, then fine. But if it doesn't work for you, and you say, well, I'm going to use a drop-in, you know, because it works for me, then that's fine. Use your drop-in. I don't care what you do. Just don't give me shit about not wanting to use it. Because like I said, this is what works for me. I'm not going to carry 5 different refrigerants around and then have to try to decide whether the guy before me used MO99 or used, you know, 407C or whatever. I'm gonna do what's right for me, and I'm gonna do what's right for the customer. And if that includes selling them a system on an 8-year-old unit, then that's what it's gonna be. And I've had to do that already a couple times this year, because me and the customer agreed that going from R22 to 410 was the best way to go. And I've never been a sales tech. I've always been a, hey, let's fix it tech. Now, I'm not going to sell a new unit because of a fan motor. I'm not going to do that. But if it's a refrigeration issue, then we'll talk about changing the unit. But, you know, if they got a bad contactor, a bad blower motor, an inducer, or fan motor, I'm going to change that part. But if it's a refrigeration issue, like a leak, then I'm quoting them a new unit. And that just is what works for me. So, anyway, y'all have a good day. And like I said, if you disagree, we just disagree. But that's just what I'm going to do. Y'all have a good one. Bye.